for a long time I thought, maybe I was just, carved by the culture. The truth of the matter was, I fucking loved the culture. It was hell. It was hell. Seriously, it was kind of like waiting to die. Eventually, I went to the doctor and I was just emotional, and I just said, listen, I can't live like this anymore. Like I'm basically dead. My name, as you've said, is Rhys Thomas, and I was actually born in Joburg, South Africa, back in '82. Started to play representative rugby by about the age of 18. Was offered an option to go to Wales in the pursuit of a pro career with Newport through their youth system. I joined that system then in 2000. I went to my first Junior World Cup with Wales under 19s in 2001. A year later, I was with Wales under 21s, where we won the Six Nations Grand Slam. And then I went on to a 10-year professional, as a 10-year professional rugby player with Newport Gwent Dragons and the Scarlets, in which time I gained 7 caps for Wales. And then my career came to a grinding halt with the Scarlets in 2012 when I had a heart attack in the gym at the Parky Scarlets. And that's when things really got interesting.
Yeah, for sure. How did you first get into rugby, and what sort of drove you to pursue it at a professional level?
So, believe it or not, growing up, I loved sport in all forms of it. Just being outdoors, I loved swimming. Was a huge cricket fan. Was actually my first passion and first love was cricket. I played representative cricket at a younger age. And then when I went to high school, I went to a very good boys-only school in Joburg called King Edward VII, or KES. And ended up, I'd never touched a rugby ball before I went to high school. And then when I joined the high school, rugby was like this major, everyone just kind of looked up to the first team rugby. It was this huge honor to wear the red jersey. And I kind of through that passion, and also the timing was pretty relevant when I moved into high school. So I went to high school in 96, but in 95 was my last year of junior school, and South Africa won the World Cup. So the country was kind of going through this huge transition, not only culturally, but on the field as well. Where after they had been in a ban for apartheid, of which I knew nothing of. I was just a kid growing up, didn't know what was going on really. And then, obviously that was like a bit of an incentive and inspiration to want to play rugby. And then that transition and timing just kind of is what led me to want to dip the toe in, so to speak.
So playing in the red of, or I assume your high school then, how do you transition from playing in the red of high school to the red of Wales, from South Africa to Europe? How did that happen? Because the clue's in the name, I guess, as well.
Yeah, exactly. At the time I went to, in South Africa, it's a week that all the provincial teams meet at. It's called Craven Week. So all the best talents, all the best talents throughout the country comes together, and they play for a position for SA schools. So South African under 19. I ended up playing SA Academy, but I kind of felt like there was a lot of obstacles in my way with a whole lot of laws and stuff that were changing at the time in South Africa. So I thought, my dad's Welsh. I've got a British passport. Newport had offered me the opportunity to go and join their youth academy. Very and cool. I thought, I play in a red jersey now. It would be pretty cool to keep playing in a red jersey. So I thought, let's go. I wanted to travel as well. And the opportunity to travel was, it was an easy sell, really. So
yeah, for sure.
Why not?
I went with it. And it was amazing. It was amazing.
Obviously, Joe and I both played rugby, not at as high a level as you played it. We know how physically demanding rugby is as a sport. What were some of the sort of toughest physical challenges you encountered playing rugby?
Do you mean on the field, but also off it?
Yeah, kind of just both. What I found incredibly hard was you know, how sore I was for like days afterwards, and then you're straight back in on Monday, and then
Yeah.
that sort of physical stress led to a lot of my mental stress as well, because I wasn't recovering properly. Did you have stuff like that? Obviously playing at a lot higher level than we did, the hits are bigger. I guess you have more help and you have more S&C and proper programming, but how did you sort of find that physical side?
I think I was kind of in that last era, mate, of, you know, it was work hard, play hard,
Yeah.
but it was also, you know, there was a kind of a complete disregard for the depth of understanding that we have now with regard to player recovery. You know, it was, you know, play on a Saturday, go get pissed, have a Sunday off, come in Monday, you know, we'll go through the analysis. We'll have a beast in, and then, you know, come Tuesday, maybe Tuesday or Monday afternoon, we'll bash each other up, depending if we won or lost. You know, if we lost, then, you know, everyone wasn't switched on enough and we weren't doing enough contact and all this bullshit. And you know, it's just what we did. It was just so short-sighted and without any premise, really. You know, it was just a very old school mentality, to which we were all just part of, like, yeah, you know, these guys are our coaches. If they think, and I mean, we always had a gentleman's agreement as well. It was very rarely did anything get really out of hand. Although we did do some crazy shit. We did like boxing, like, because we needed to toughen up and you know, all this crazy stuff. But yeah, I think the real eye opener started to come for me when it was just going through the steps. You know, going from, you know, international level at 19s, 21s, to then going pro. And then the difference between, at my time when I played, was the difference between that level of professional player at club level, like Magnus League or whatever, that ULC or URC, whatever it's called now. And then to go from that to Champions Cup or the one underneath it. I don't know the two leagues all that well now. But that difference, that jump in competition was huge. And then obviously the jump from that to international was just another huge jump again. With that came the intensity of training. So for me, the early shocks in what surprised me with the toll on the body was, firstly, my inability to believe that I could be pushed beyond what I believed capable. So my capacity to understand how far I could push myself. And that was kind of blown out the water by, especially when I joined Wales in 2006, and we had Craig White, who was the S&C coach at the time. And he actually, I mean, it was insane. I mean, we went to a couple of really crazy training camps, and yeah, it was just something else, you know, like basically just spewing your ring up, you know, every session and 3 sessions a day. Yeah, it was hard, you know, and then the physicality and the speed and the intensity of international rugby and the lack of time that you had to think even. So that really is what I can remember that caught me out as a surprise. To be honest with you, I can't even remember it. I can't remember my games unless I watch video. I can't tell you. It wasn't like I was concussed and can't remember. Sometimes I may have been, but I just the thought process of being there is not there. I can remember the anthem, the being there, the bus drive there, back afterwards in the tunnel, but the pitch, nothing.
Wow, that's amazing.
I wanted to talk about sort of flipping that on its head, like the mental side of things. I listened to a podcast with Dan Bigger, and he spoke of Lewis Rhys Samet, and they were talking about how grueling the Welsh sort of like fitness regime was. But they were also talking about the mental like preparation side of things, like dealing with pressure. How did you find that side of professional rugby and also international rugby, being on the biggest stage, you know, with the use of social media? I went on the England rugby social media after the game they just played against the All Blacks. People are getting murdered in the comments, people like George Ford, which I find is a massive shame.
Yeah.
But how did you sort of deal with that side of things and the mental side of being in the press and on the news with Wales?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things. Obviously, that revolution kind of that Craig and Gats brought into Wales, because I think at the time there was what had experienced, because I was trained with Wales from about 2004 in the back in the like the larger squad, but never actually made the match day 2023, 24. And the jump in intensity was huge when Gats came in his first reign, and Craig White
That's
just brought it, and it was the jump was huge. It was huge. But one thing that I still think is probably not quite there, although Gats did try to bring it in. I think they had someone who came in, or was it Gareth Jenkins? I can't remember who bought it, but someone bought it he was an ex-SAS guy or something like that. He was like a sports psychologist, but it wasn't great. The mental aspect, and I still think there's so many gains that can be had here. Like I do a lot of stuff around breath work with performance, but also transformational breath now as a coach. And I see the gains that can be had from these areas, but also I come across some amazing bits of research and trials and data. And one of them is just like visualization and about how potent visualization can be. And they actually did a test with two guys over the period of 2 or 3 weeks about one guy was lifting weights with the dumbbell and the other guy was visualizing lifting the weights. And the guy who was visualizing lifting the weights actually had greater gains on muscle mass in his bicep than the guy who was lifting. So it just kind of shows you, right? Yeah, it's crazy, right? And I don't think we've tapped into anywhere near the amount of potential that is in that space. I also think it's completely unnecessary for the amount of bashing that pro rugby does Monday to Friday.
Yep,
Completely
agreed.
unnecessary. I think it's completely unnecessary, the amount of contact sessions that are in the off-season, the length of the seasons. There's a lot of stuff I think that's wrong with rugby right now. And I think it's why it's dropping off. It's the first time rugby's out the top 10 most watched sports internationally. Decline in numbers, certainly in Wales. I know that much. They'll say it's not, but they include women's rugby and men's rugby, and they say that the number of rugby players has gone up, which is just a missell. It's bullshit. So at the end of the day, like rugby is in need of some refining. And also to have a clear message and strategy around safety, right? Because at the end of the day, just look at NFL, right? They had this court case. They lost. They know that you can get CTE from American football. They took the due diligence. They knew that, right, okay, how can we reduce impact? They've done all this research. It's out there. You can reduce head impacts by 80% by reducing contact sessions in training. So now I don't know what the exact rule is, but I think it's 6 or 8 contact sessions in the off season permitted. And now they even wear those scrum caps on top of the helmet. And then in season, I think they're allowed 1 or 2 contact sessions. So this is the kind of guidance we need, because I think rugby, it works, right? And then we've got savages playing the game. Savages, they're monsters nowadays, right? Explosive, powerful, huge. It's so bad. Our benches are stacked with just these studs, these monsters. And it's like, right, this is beautiful. It's brilliant. It can be really entertaining. But what is the need of injuring these absolute specimens in training? It's not necessary. And this is where the mental aspect can be brought in.
Agreed. I find that CT discussion really important, especially for someone like me. My sort of story with rugby was I stopped playing about 10 months ago due to concussions. So I've had about 6 concussions. 3 have been from in training and 3 have been from in games. 2, I was knocked out cold completely. So I've been careful and I've kind of stepped back from it. I've played with countless people who have been knocked out cold in training, who have been, because I think the main reason is, and this is sort of my view on things, is when you're training at a high level, every session you don't have that same adrenaline you do as you do in games, in my opinion. And when you're going in cold and you're doing contact drills, or you're basically going full goo in training, as it's not supposed to be full goo, but then someone gets hit and everyone's sort of like flips, and then it becomes full goo and it becomes a scrap, and it's just that over and over thing. I think a lot of it comes, a lot of my head problems have come from training sessions. So I find it really interesting you said that about the NFL, because I follow the NFL as a super fan. I love it. I watch it every Sunday, watch 6 o'clock games, watch 9 o'clock games, and they're 100% change it correctly. And I find it a shame that rugby's taking a lot longer to do that, because as you said, people are getting bigger, people are getting stronger. I don't know if you've seen that French kid Pasolo Tuilagi. He's like 150 kilograms. He's 19 years old.
Second row,
and he moved. Yeah, unbelievable player. But like, if that's sort of the generation coming through, these even bigger guys, even stronger, then something's got to change if it's already bad at the moment. And I know from my past teammates that a lot of people have struggled with head problems too.
Yeah, man, it's like the unspoken truth about what's actually happening out there. And like I'm all for keeping rugby, right? I'm all for it. And I think the values and the passion and the entertainment and the opportunities that working class people and get through the game of rugby is incredible. And what it does for certain countries, just look what it does to South Africa as a country in regards to bringing it together culturally as well, right? It is an incredible tool for transformation. In many ways, brings people together, no matter what race, culture. It goes beyond the game of rugby, right? So,
Completely agree.
But it is sad to see that, like, there's no accountability on behalf, and we're not blaming. There's a cohort of men going through World Rugby right now. They're just trying to bring this to light, and just say, like, right, okay, let's put a line in the sand. Things have been let go too far. We know that there is damage being caused to the brains of athletes, okay? And that's not to say that should stop rugby. No. That should just make it more safe, right? That it's not necessary to bash each other up every fucking week. That it's not necessary to bash each other up all preseason and play for 10 months of the year. It's bullshit. We should play for 6 months of the year. And then for 4 months of the year, we rest for 8, the other 4 or whatever. I don't care. Like, some fatties have to go in and beast themselves a little more. Like, that's fair enough. Like, I've been there. So, so like, it's just saying, right, okay. Like, because in the NFL now, when they sign a contract, they have to sign, and it says in the contract, clear as day, that I am fully aware that I may get brain damage from the game of football, and in our case, rugby, right? Because I see it now. I had a catch up with my friends. Before I did a farewell, when I came back to SA, and yeah, bro, I don't know what to tell you. It's not good. I've got just my old group of friends from the Dragons, the first Dragons group of players that when it went from club to region, 2003 onwards, for that first like 6-7 years, and yeah. It's sad, bro. Seriously, it's not cool.
Yeah, I agree, because I think it's a sport that's. Oh, sorry, mate. I was just going to say it's a sport that's given myself loads of opportunities as well, and Joe the same. Joe and I talk about this all the time. Like, it's our main core friendship group. It's given me opportunities to do and go places I didn't think I would go with sport on that sport side. I've met some of the coolest people. It's taught me the best lessons, and I've learned from amazing people. And I love that sort of gladiator side of it. I say this to Joe all the time. Joe asked me last week, he was like, do you miss playing? And I was like, hell yeah, I miss playing, because I miss that sort of feeling of the adrenaline rush when you go out and it feels like you're almost in a scrap for 80 minutes and then everyone's together afterwards, and like you look around and, you're almost in a way, it almost feels like you're at war with your best mates. With the fans watching stuff as well. And it's an amazing feeling. And I absolutely love the sport. And it's a shame to see where it's kind of going, because I can see it from the outside in now, whereas before I was kind of, again, not to your extent, but I was in it, and I was living it. I was living with the boys, and and seeing that people, you know, all these contracts that are getting pulled out and people dropping down the leagues into the national leagues because there's very little money in it anymore and no one's making money off it. And it's just a massive shame. And so before we go into a full conversation of rugby, which I could happily do, I could talk about rugby all day, every day. I wanted to ask you, sort of looking back on your rugby career, knowing what you know now, would have you done anything differently?
I mean, I'd like to say I would have changed something, but I mean, it's completely pointless in even going there. So, I mean, it was great while it lasted. And, you know, I have very fond memories, most of which I wasn't actually allowing myself to enjoy, because when I turned into this newer version of who I am today, or my authentic version of who I am today, I kind of held a little bit of shame and guilt and around the way that in which I conducted myself, that maybe I wasn't perhaps a good enough professional, or that I could have done better and tried harder and applied myself better, because I was super talented, but my application was piss poor. But I think I look back at it now and it just was what it was, you know.
I wanted to ask you, Rhys, do you think a part of that was you fitting in to what you felt that you needed to be a part of to fit in with your peers because of the cookie cutter nature of rugby? I'm a guy who, up until very recently, has played rugby, and I don't drink, so I found being involved in that environment really tough at first. Do you feel like you played along with those things because you felt like you should, or it became naturally to you? And then how did you feel that played out for you?
I've thought about this so many times, mates. I mean, and it's a great question, because for a long time I thought, yeah, maybe I was just, you know, carved by the culture. But the truth of the matter was, I fucking loved the culture. And the problem was
Too much.
was that I couldn't say no when I was on the fringe, when I was given opportunities as a young man with the talent that I had, for people who could see it, and they put me in the squad and were like, bro, just buckle down, put your head down, and you have got like a starting jersey here for the next decade. Like, I could have racked up some serious caps. But dude, being able to have the restraint, the willpower to be able to say no when I was not picked, or I was 23rd man, which before the full front rows were on the bench, like I had to go everywhere with the squad and do the warm-up live scrums. And then whilst the anthems were singing, I'm in the shower getting dressed into my suit, like, honestly. And then on the Sunday when everyone goes home, I was in the training facility in Wales getting beasted when everyone else has got a hangover and going out. Now, I also had a hangover, but I was getting beasted, so that wasn't so fun. But this is what I mean. So, like, that's where the culture caught me out, is because I didn't have the capacity or the foresight to know that actually for the next 1, 2, 3, 4 years, 5 years for my career, which is so fucking short, I'm just actually going to apply myself completely, not drink, or drink in like breaks or pre-season or in over the Christmas break. Who knows, right? Just hypothetical. But I think, the culture did pull my pants down in that regard for sure.
You said your career was shorter than you wanted it to be just then. Obviously stopped by reasons which was out of your control. Can you tell us a bit more about what happened on that day? I think it was in the gym on a bike.
So I was at the Scarlets. It was January the 27th, and I probably arguably had the best pro season of my life, because it was my last year of contract, and true to form, you know, when push came to shove and I knew I wanted something and I applied myself correctly and I stopped boozing and smoking fags, all of a sudden my performances would go through the roof. So I was used to this. This is what I was capable of, and had a great season. I actually agreed to move to France on a very large 6-figure contract for 3 years. And I was just in the gym doing an interval session on a bike because I had a bulging disc C2, C3. Over the Christmas period, it it had got inflamed. And then I was just doing an interval session, 45-minute blow, just 1,000 cals. And I had about 5 minutes left to go. And then just boom, massive heart attack. And I was conscious, but I couldn't see. I was so dizzy. I managed to like come off the bike, walk across the gym. Like I couldn't have been walking straight, as I said, it didn't feel like. The gym was quite a long gym under the stands at Parky Scarlets. I opened the gym door, and then the physio door was directly to the right and also quite long. And I opened that and I just shouted at the head physio, Pat, I think I'm having a heart attack. And then I got taken to the hospital and they did emergency operation. I had a huge cardiac arrest. I had clots in my heart. I was very lucky to survive. I had a quadruple bypass. And that was that. It was a wrap. And for the next 12 months, I just kind of was just in a battle for my life, really, because my health was like not good.
Did you find anything was sort of going through your mind at that moment, or were you just almost fight or flight, just trying to survive?
Yeah, I remember being at this point, I was so ill. I couldn't even, to walk from downstairs up to my bedroom, I probably had 10 stairs. I had to stop 3 times and sit on a stair. And because like 3-4 steps, sit, I would be so out of breath. Like I'd played a full game of rugby. And then next 3. And so like the thing with that was that I knew that there was no more rugby in me. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't like something wrong with my neck or concussion or something else that I knew that I felt like I could play, but I couldn't. Like I was fucked. So that kind of gave me the peace of mind that I couldn't play rugby if I wanted to, but right now, like I just needed to survive. Like it felt like a battle. And I remember being so sick and I went to the doctor and he said, cause I couldn't breathe, bro. And he said to me, just listen, just enjoy what time you have left. And I had a payment coming through for my critical illness. And I took the kids away as much as I could. We went to Mexico, we went to Mauritius. But I was so sick. Bro. I was bloated. I was vomiting all the time. I couldn't walk 10, 20 steps. I would be sleeping all the time. It was hell. Seriously. It was kind of like waiting to die. Eventually, I went to the doctor and I was just emotional. And I just said, listen, I can't live like this anymore. Like I'm basically dead. I can't do anything. I can't even I wanted a beer and I couldn't even have a beer because if I drank a pint of lager, I felt so bloated. I thought I was going to explode. So, and that would make me just tired and I would sleep. So it was really tough. And then they said I needed a heart transplant, but then they told me I was untransplantable because I had pulmonary hypertension after they did the test. So then they said, oh, well, actually we can't transplant you now. So you just need to go home and assess where you are. And I said, well, how long have I got left? And they said, you got about 12 months to live. So I was like, right. I said, well, what's the other option? And they said, well, we can implant a machine in your heart, which can reduce the pulmonary hypertension and hopefully make you transplantable. But he said, just go home and digest it. And I just remember going home and just being just devastated, absolutely devastated that was the case. And, that's where it went from there. From there, I just, I kind of went 6 months and then they called me up to Queen Elizabeth to the hospital there because there's not a heart transplant hospital in Wales, believe it or not. And that's when I started to go through that process of waiting for this machine, which was also a absolute fucking nightmare. The whole process, 6 weeks pre-op, I was in CCU, coronary care unit in Birmingham, basically just witnessing immense death, destruction, grieving. Every day for 6 weeks, it was horrendous. Taught me a lot of very valuable lessons about life. And then I had an operation for this machine, which is a battery system that keeps me alive. It's a pump that sucks the blood out of my heart and pumps it back through my aorta. It's with a wire that comes out of my abdomen, keeps me alive 24 hours a day. I've had it for 10 years. But after that op, I was in a coma for 2 weeks. Very lucky again to survive. And then when I woke up, I was half man, half machine in 2014. And then the real battle began, really.
Yeah. Well, did you find the mental battle, on par with the physical battle? You're saying how you walked 10 steps and you were out of breath. How was that mentally for you, sort of dealing with that? Were they kind of similar, the stress you were going through, physical and the mental, or was one outweighing the other at that point?
So apart from directly afterwards, when it was just more survival, it was like survival. Like it was just pure animal instinct. It was just like, I'm going to get from A to B. I'm not overthinking this shit. I just need to just stay here. Like I don't want to die. I've got a young family. I had a wife, my ex-wife, like people. I had a great support network. I must note that, right? I wasn't like this rogue dude that didn't have a good support network. I had a solid support network. And physically was like familiar, like the suffering was familiar. I've been injured. I've overcome injuries, big injuries. So I was like I'll get through this. Like, do you know what I mean? I'll be fine. 6 months, 1 year, whatever it takes, I'll be right. So like the physical actually part of it, I found all right. Like, the sawing through the sternum, I had 2 of those. I never really suffered too much with that pain. They took the vein from my leg for my bypass. After I woke up my first surgery, that was more painful than my sternum. I was like, what the fuck's wrong with my leg? And then we took the vein from there. I was like, fuck, why? But so like the physical part, albeit challenging, is something like, I think it's like, it keeps us going too, doesn't it? Do you know what I mean? It was like, I'm going to overcome this, like the belief in that. But the real battle came then with the mental. And going home after my second op with this machine, knowing that I was attached to it for 8 hours a day. After 8 hours, if it beeped for 15 minutes, it would tell me I needed to change them to a new set. And if I hadn't changed them to a new set, the machine would stop, my heart would stop, and I would die. So like plenty of incentive and to get, to grips with this machine pretty quick, which took time. But I was grateful. I was home. I was with my support network, with my family, my children, my pets. And it was like amazing, right? Like it was a blessing. And I saw it as such, especially after what I'd witnessed. But then over those next few months, and at the time, I didn't know anything else to do with my life other than rugby. And my self-worth was so low that I still attached myself with my identity. And my purpose was that I am just going to be a rugby coach because like that's all I do. It's all I know. It's all I'm good at. So I went into that and I started doing my coaching badges. I started coaching at like Division 2 or 1 side. I can't remember what we were at the time. Coaching a school. And slowly, bit by bit, I kind of got sucked back into that toxic culture. And then I found a different identity. I'd always been like a bit of a clown and a bit of a pisshead, and I could do things to excess. But obviously now I'm on a heart transplant waiting list, but I've got a machine. But again, it was like, I can, I've got a fluid restriction because my heart was fucked, but, 2.5 liters a day of any fluid. But I can't drink lager because that's only 4 pints. But fuck, if I switch to whiskey, tequila, gin, vodka, I can get a hell of a lot out of that. Obviously, I don't want to put too much mixer in it because then I'm stealing from my water retention. So then I was like, right, it became more straight, more potent, and then all of a sudden things started to just go. So yeah, that's like, it was dark, bro. And in between the darkness was severe anxiety, panic attacks. And had you told me in 2012 and come up to me and said, bro, I'm struggling with my mental health, and you were an academy player, I get panic attacks and anxiety attacks, I would have gone, what the fuck are you on about? Like, bro, Man up. Don't be such a pussy. Like, you can come through this. Like, that's how I would have seen it. Like, that's the truth of the matter. Now, obviously, here I stand today, 12 years later, and I can tell you, I would have addressed that situation had it arisen in a very different manner. And I don't blame me at that person then. That's just the way I believed and perceived the world, which was a shame. But as most men do, especially in that environment, we don't really understand our feelings and emotions. And I think what men need to start to understand is if we had a better grasp of understanding our feelings, emotions, sensations, we would actually be better off, not only as a species, as a to mankind, but also to our sport, to be more connected, more present, to be able to connect and communicate more efficiently and more effectively with how we feel, of how more we can get out of ourselves, the depth of which we could achieve greatness with each other, and manage to communicate that without the need to check out with this falsehood of pretense and bullshit and bravado. It's all fucking bullshit. And it's masks. It's completely unnecessary if we'd just been taught it correctly from a younger age. But no one's to blame for that, and I don't blame rugby or anyone or myself for that. It's just how it is.
On that note, I'd love to get your opinion on what advice you'd give to a young man or woman listening to this who might be going through the same thing as you, who might be really struggling in the identity piece and potentially using alcohol as a crutch to cope. What would you say to them? And it's quite hard advice to give because some people just don't want to hear it, I guess.
Yeah. First thing I would say is that it's okay, that you've done a great job, and well done on you for getting to where you are today. And if that young man, young woman has lost something that was probably the most important thing to them at that point in their lives, wherever that time in their lives might be, and also not to carry the guilt if that loss is impacting your inability to love the things you have in your life, like a child or a partner or a job or something of that nature, that is okay too. And just know that, like, one thing that was so helpful for me was to understand that I was actually grieving. But I was like, but that's impossible because that's when someone dies. And they were like, no, you're grieving a career because you're living in the past. And until you come to terms and accept that you are no longer Rhys, the rugby player, you will continue to live in the past. And that all that's going to do is bring you low mood and depression. And you're going to live and continue to be in this cycle of grief. Now, I think one thing that's very helpful, and I offer it to my clients when I work with them, is about looking at I'm sure it's called the Kubler-Ross grief cycle. And it's a cycle that shows where you are in the cycle of grief. And the first one is just having awareness and it could make so much sense to you, like, fuck. And it doesn't matter if you're playing for Wales or whether you're playing for Newport High School Old Boys thirds. It doesn't matter, because that game is your life. That game is it's your routine. It's the way that you release tension, frustration, anger in a healthy way with your mates, putting your body on the line, and then having a laugh afterwards, just like we talked about at the top of this podcast. So, like, that is the beauty of it. And I think when we start to compare is when we start to go wrong, because comparison is the thief of joy. It's no point. It's completely subjective. We cannot look at another person and compare our lives to them, because you losing a rugby career is the same as me losing a rugby career. No matter what level you played at, does not matter. And whatever injury you had and that caused you to career end, whether that was, it doesn't matter. Like, if it was, mine wasn't as bad as yours, well, no, it still stopped you playing, right? But how can we park that? How can we make peace with that, accept that, and not live in the past anymore, but not shut a door on it, that we don't remember the good stuff? Like, for me, I hid my Welsh cap. I hid all my jerseys. I fucking hated rugby when I quit it because of the way I was treated by the game. And absolutely rightly so. I mean, the way I was treated, no man or woman should ever have to go through that. It was disgusting, right? But again, I've made peace with that. And I expect no apology, and I have yet to have one from any of the regions or from the WRU. And I don't want one. It's not necessary. No. But it's really important to be able to make peace with that.
How do you kind of find peace with that? Because I don't know how you felt, Joe, listening to that, but that kind of hit home with the last 9-10 months for me, and I know probably the same for you. Joe's was a neck injury, mine was concussions, and it's just like everyone in your, whether it's in your family, whether it's your close friends, whether it's your teammates, they know you as kind of the rugby guy or the sportsman. And then when they're like, "What are you up to at the moment? Are you still playing rugby?" You're like, "No." It's kind of like it's all you know, really. Like it was rugby and cricket were my two sports, and I didn't reach the goals I wanted to in rugby. I played at a high level, but wanted to reach the Scotland 20 squad. Got injured the day before, a week before I was supposed to go up, and it was just it's things like that which that really messes with me to this day, where I didn't get to achieve what I wanted to, what I set out to achieve, and I now haven't come to grips with the sort of transition. And I know a lot of my friends who would be listening to this, who are professional rugby players at the moment and are sort of that phase of coming out where they haven't quite reached where they want to go, and they're not quite good enough to kick on to the level they want to. What sort of advice would you give there about dealing with that? Was there anything in particular you found, or is it kind of just figuring out your way per person?
Well, yes and no. So we are always our most potent healer, right? And finding our way out of our mess and how to make our mess into a message or our pain into power is where it's really at, right? But sometimes when you're in it, you can't see the wood for the trees, right? Because then we start to have, I feel like a failure. I didn't achieve my goals. But then you start saying, I didn't do this, I didn't do that. And that's ego, right? So it's understanding that at the same time, what is your identity? Like we've said, right? And if that identity has been your whole life to be you went out and you performed because of what? Who were you trying to? Who is it to be seen by? Were you trying to be an athlete for a reason? Because you wanted your mother, dad, your carer, your aunt, uncle, grandfather to see you, to see your worth. Because maybe your worth wasn't good enough to them as just Joe Blogs. But if you were Joe Blogs that was excellent at football, rugby, tennis, cricket, swimming, all of a sudden, like, they would then come watch you. Maybe. Or maybe that's what you told yourself. But maybe that wasn't the case anyway. But anyway, then we fall in love with the game and we don't think about these things anymore, and it just becomes a passion and a love and and I enjoy this stuff. But ultimately, it is important for us to understand that a greater self-awareness is gonna what help you through your transition. So understanding that we need to make peace with the past. So that is about acceptance. Understanding where you are in the cycle of grief. So looking at that Kubler-Ross grief cycle and just being really honest and compassionate with yourself and being like, right, I'm looking at this. My career's over. I'm a bit lost, but I need to slowly, compassionately, over time, give myself time to maybe start writing some stuff down, journaling, and being like, right, I'm going to start navigating how I'm feeling. Maybe you can start taking a little logbook about how I feel emotionally, mentally, physically, every day. I'm going to start doing this. And then start feeling into my grief. Instead of numbing it and going to booze, alcohol, drugs, phone, sex, food, I'm going to actually start leaning into this feeling. What is this feeling that I'm feeling? This is where feelings are super important, and where the sensations and emotions we need to have a great grasp and understanding on. Because through this also lack of identity, or this egoic identity that we may have through being praised throughout especially in the UK, right? Your little village, your little town, where everyone knows you as, oh, Johnny, the rugby player. Or like you said, you may not see someone for 2-3 years and you go back to the village and it's like, how's the rugby, boy? Yeah. You're still going well. And it's like, I haven't played rugby for 3 years. I had a career ender. Oh, what a shame. You were so bloody good at that, weren't you? And all that. You're like, fucking hell. You know what I mean? So it's hard to get away from. So it's how do we, one thing that helped me a ton was to ask a very simple question. And that question came to me in a deep amount of suffering. at the end of what was a really horrific time of alcohol abuse. And I asked myself a question, and the question was, who am, because I was fucking lost. I felt vulnerable. I felt empty. I felt numb. I felt heavy. I felt a deep mixture of guilt, of shame, of remorse. And I was just in this really terrible place. And I just thought to myself, like, I've had enough of this. I've had enough of this fucking feeling this way and acting and behaving out of alignment with my truest self. And I didn't know who that person was. So then it was like, I'm going to start here. Like, who am I? And I don't know who I am yet. I'm 38 and it's pretty horrifying that I don't. But I know one thing. I don't like the man that I've been. I've actually never liked doing those things that I was doing, because the next day I fucking hate myself for it. So, do you know what? I'm going to start changing those things. I'm going to start creating a different way of operating, because I may not be able to change the past, but I sure as hell can change the future. And for me, then it was like, I was like, right, what is the foundation? Because my foundations were non-existent. They weren't even built on sand. They weren't even fucking there. Because I didn't have a moral compass. I didn't have values. If you asked me what my value was, I wouldn't have been able to tell you. That's serious. Right? It wasn't a thing. And then it was like, where is my integrity? Where is my honesty? Where is, like, you know, as a man, not only as a man, but as an athlete, not to anyone else, but to myself. Never mind my children, my ex-wife, my family, my friends, my colleagues, my teammates. Like, me, I'll start with me. Because if I can be honest and transparent and brutal with my with showing up to who I wish to be, and hold myself accountable, make peace with the past, accept my situation, and begin to lean into the work of finding out who I am.
Rhys, I wanted to. Yeah, it is, mate. I love that. I think I want to take you back, if I could, to very briefly to that really dark time. What was the turning point for you, and where were you? Like, I mean, what in that headspace? Where does it suddenly just change to wanting to make change? Because for so many people, we spend years and years and years telling ourselves that we want change, and ultimately it never comes and it never happens for us. So where were you, and what was the sort of main catalyst for that change?
The main catalyst was suffering, a tremendous amount of it, and it was a wonderful teacher. It was a fucking, at the time, didn't feel like. But the long and short of it was, 1st of September 2019, I crashed my car drunk. And the events that evening that followed were like something out of the truth. Like, what's that? Like Jeremy Kyle, or like the American version of it. It was just horrendous. It was fucking horrendous. And a few months later, I actually ended up on going to visit one of my best friends. He lived in Mauritius, because I had been sober over Christmas. For the first time ever, I'd gone for a stretch without booze because of what had happened on the 1st of September.
Yeah.
And I knew things needed to change because they were bad. 3 of my best mates from school, my dad and my brother all chipped in financially and sent me to a rehab facility about 45 minutes from here in Cape Town.
Wow.
And I didn't want to go. Genuinely, I didn't think like I had a problem. I thought I was, I had a problem, but like I was at this stage 4 months sober. Like, I've got this, I've gone to AA 3 times. I know everything. I'll heal myself. Like, you know what I mean? And because of the pressure my friend and my ex-wife put on me to go, I said, right, I'll go. I said, but I'm going to go, and I promise you they're going to let me go after one day because they're going to tell me I'm fine. That's how fucked up I was. Anyway, so I went through, walked through the doors of rehab, and I just melted into the ground like a puddle. And it just felt like all of the bullshit, all of this pretending and the masks and all of the lies and secrets and bullshit that I had spun for all those years and just got lost in the woods. felt like I was carrying a rucksack with about 30 kilos in it. And when I got through those doors, it was just, the first guy that came up to me was a recovery assistant, and he said, Rhys, if you wish to change, if you be completely honest and put all of your shit on the table and just put it out there, he said, you'll have a chance of recovering. And I remember the first meeting we had, like in a circle with all these different addicts. And the one woman said, straight off the bat, she said, only roughly about 5% of the world's population are addicts. But only 5% of that 5% will fully recover from whatever their addiction is.
Wow.
And I remember sitting in there and I was like, I am going to be that fucking 5%. And although I was just so broken, mate. I was so broken. It was so hectic. And I can't explain to you. The process that I went through in that house was absolutely life-changing. It was a beautiful, beautiful experience. And I had also some form of spiritual awakening there, to which I was also very resistant to, being this macho rugby guy. But someone also gave me a good piece of advice about just thinking about good, orderly direction as God. And I thought, I can handle that for now, whilst I lean into like, what is, spirit, God, the universe, So I started to look into the occult type histories and our past and our different cultures. And I was very intrigued by all of that. And then it's kind of led me on this wild journey. And then with all of that therapy and also when I left, I started to work with AA, 12 Steps of Recovery. And the 12 steps are amazing. I would recommend anyone to do the 12 steps. You don't have to be an alcoholic to do them. It's very, very revealing. It's free as well. And what it gave me initially, and what I don't understand, but now I do understand, and what initially that context was within AA, is that why is it effective? Albeit I don't think it is ultimately going to fully cure you of addiction. What does it give addicts or alcoholics? Is it gives people a community. It gives people connection where they're not judged, and they can come in and they can be honest and tell you the most fucked up things, and no one is going to judge them for it because everyone in that room has been there. It doesn't matter what age, race, sex, or creed those people are, they just get you. So then through that connection and community and belonging, it creates through also this value system, these steps, accountability, it allows you to like kind of unravel, right? In a safe environment, and is, in inverted commas, safe, because only we can create that. But the environment is there for safety. And then it was just this process of, and then I was like, I wanted more. Like, I was so interested by this. After this darkness I'd felt, to then feel this, because I lost everything, ultimately. When I came out of rehab, the universe really threw it at me. It was like, right, you want to change? Let's start, but you're going to start from the bottom, brother. My ex-wife left me. I did a podcast. They sacked my insurance. I went from a very decent sum to zero. Got evicted from my house. Yeah. And honestly, it was the biggest blessing because I was just like, right, like the universe has kicked my ass. And like, but now I've got this beautiful opportunity of leaning into like who I am. And you have the luxury in the UK, don't forget, that we get universal credit. That if we don't have a property, they'll put us in a home. That's not a luxury in Africa, mate. And in most of other countries. So like I was very, very blessed. And to have the NHS, right?
Yeah.
So like those three things were just so amazing for me to be able to like be grateful for the UK's assistance in that help. But also to like just be like, right now, I'm just going to use those things. And I'm going to find who the fuck I am. And then I'm going to find a way out of this mess. But I want to build a life that I'm aligned with, that I feel purpose, that I feel that it doesn't feel like work. And that's what I did, bro. And here I stand today, self-employed, 5 years sober, happiest I've ever been. mate, bro, honestly, what a blessing. Like, rugby was amazing, but the last 5 years pales rugby into insignificance.
Love that, mate. I think that also leads perfectly into breathwork. And I guess that's sort of where
Yeah.
were you on your journey after you came out of rehab and you had all these shit things happen to you that ended up being the best thing that happened to you? Where does breathwork fall into that for you? What happened?
Yeah, so in the inevitable journey of self-discovery, I ended up teaming up with Craig White again,
The S&C
my
guy.
old S&C
Yeah.
coach, who is now an amazing he's a business coach, a leadership coach. He also holds leadership retreats for men. Just a really powerful human. And he messaged me a few times. He said, "Come join I'm running a men's retreat in Yorkshire." And I was like, "No, I'm good, bro. I'm healed. I'm good. I don't need anything." And he's like, "Yeah, I think you'll enjoy it." And I was like, "Yeah." I thought, "Fuck it. Do you know what? I'm gonna go for it." And
Why not?
yeah, I didn't have the money, but thankfully he allowed me to pay a payment, whatever it's
Installments.
called, structure. Yeah. And it was very somatic. It was going by the archetypal male archetype systems. So it's a very deep dive for me. All stuff I hadn't and didn't really understand. Being held just by men, very vulnerable space, but the space was held beautifully. It was a very deep dive, but very familiar and beautiful to be around men again, you know? And to notice how much men needed men. And for us to be able to be vulnerable with other men, but be held and to be seen and to tell other men about our suffering and our pain and the shit we've been through and the shit that we've done and regret and have shame over and sexual shame and all this stuff, right? So it blew my mind, actually. But it was all somatic work. Like, we were doing Osho meditations and yoga and breath work and cold water plunges and sweat lodges and all these things that were just testing us in the different ways. And then using that camaraderie, and it was just beautiful. It was beautifully constructed as a retreat. And then on the last day we did breath work. And dude, it was just this wild journey, completely unbelievable, transformational breathwork session I did with a good friend, Matt Dunn. And we went, it was the first time I ever experienced on my own the ability to use stillness. I've meditated and I'd had gains initially, but then with breathwork, it brought a different level of presence. And it took me from my head and it just opened my heart, like, poof. And all this just baggage of repressed and suppressed emotions that I'd held for a very, very long time, just boom.
On cue.
On cue. And I'll try again. So it just really took me into the heart, and I had a incredibly profound experience, and I just knew there and then I needed to practice and train in conscious connected breath, transformational breath work.
You knew immediately.
Literally, I went home, I looked online for a course. I spoke to a few different courses and schools. I was recommended the same woman a few times. Her name's Steph Magenta, 7 Directional Breathwork. And I did it through Integrative Breath. Dr. Ray Rydell and Steph were a partnership then. And I went, it was phenomenal. I loved it. We trained for like 8 months. Then our case studies were a couple more months on top of that. And I've been practicing ever since. And then after that, I got more intrigued by the breath and started to lean into the more breath science side of things. So about mechanics and chemistry and nervous system, sleep, stress, burnout, performance, hot and cold, contrast therapies.
Yeah.
So, and just how they can be impacted through the breath. So all this stuff has just brought us just amazing ways in which I've now learned and now teach for others to understand, feel, and be able to regulate themselves or get better performance or whatever it may, whatever they desire, really.
I don't know if you saw just coming back to rugby slightly, I don't know if you saw the England All Blacks game this weekend, but Marcus Smith was taking a conversion. And I think it was Austin Hay was talking about how he's incorporated breathwork techniques into like taking the conversion, taking the kick. We had Jamie Clements on the podcast twice. Unbelievable. Talked about everything breathwork as well. And he took us through like a 5-minute sort of breathwork not routine, but like exercise type thing at the end. And I was saying the Marcus thing before because he said it how much like peace of mind it gives him and it quietens his head. I have ADHD. I have a very sporadic, very impulsive brain. I'll do things. I have 5 different tabs going on, and I know Joe's quite similar as well. That was the first time in years I felt proper peace and like quiet.
Yeah.
It almost felt just like someone had switched a tap off in my head, and it was the weirdest feeling ever. But the one thing I found really hard is when Jamie guided us through it, I got it completely. But the minute I tried to do it myself at home, it was almost like I couldn't do it again. I couldn't emulate what he did for us. What advice would you give to people there? Is there a way that they can do it on their own, or was I just doing it wrong?
So, no, I mean, you can't really do it wrong. I think this is one thing really important for us to understand about these meditation, breath work. Obviously, if there's certain techniques you're trying to do and you're trying to get to an end result that technique is important for, like some techniques like conscious connected. But if it was for was it for down regulation, or were you up regulating? Was it quite a vigorous breathing technique, or was it quite a gentle?
It was, I think it was, Joe, do you know, it was breathing in for, I think it was 4 seconds and then like blowing out through a straw for 8 seconds.
Yeah.
And then it was we did like 3 different exercises, but that was
box breathing would have been one of them.
Yeah, I think was box breathing. Yeah, it was something like that.
Yeah,
so I'm not too sure. I think it was to relax.
So I mean, it's really important. I think it's the easiest, least expensive. Well, it's free. Way for us to understand how to biohack our nervous system, right? Our autonomic nervous system, straight in it, get to the breath and just find like what works for you, because there are so many techniques. Now, the beauty of it is that there are that many people doing breath work now that if you go around and put it in and do a little bit of research, whether that's on social media and then go online and look at their breath schools or become a subscriber to one of their many websites. Like, it's pretty inexpensive actually for you to pay a very small price in most cases to learn. And sometimes, people may be burnt out, or they may be at that point where they in deep, having issues with different things in life, right? So you may need to seek one-to-one and work with a mentor, a coach, a breath coach, a therapist, whatever it may be. But breath, if we can get it right and understand the huge gains that we can make in regulating your own nervous system and bringing you the ability to actually digest food better, to sleep better, to train better. Like, dude, it's a no-brainer. Seriously, no. And people need to get onto it. Like Marcus Smith, well done. I mean, it's the last frontier. Like, we can go like 20 days, 21 days plus without food, right? We can go 3-4 days without water. Most people can't go 3 minutes without air. So like, I can guarantee you 95+% of people are dysfunctional breathers. And that's okay, because we're coming from a completely fucking traumatized society, right? It's high stress. Our environments are stressful. Life is fast. It's coming at us hard, right? So a lot of us are mouth breathing. We're living in environments that there's a lot of natural toxins, environmental toxins. And if we're breathing in and out of the mouth, if you have the luxury of being able to breathe through your nose, it's not halfway across your face like Quacker Smith, then, you need to learn how to breathe through your nose. And why aren't you breathing through the nose? And that's okay. Like, it's not like, oh, I'm a bad person, I can't breathe properly, is there something wrong with me? No, It's cool. You're good. Like, no one taught us how to do this shit. So like, it's okay. Just start somewhere. Go online, go on YouTube and just have it like a guided breathwork or a guided meditation, and just feel your way into it.
Yeah.
And just see what works for you. There's so many techniques.
We get since we had Jamie on, actually, we've had a plethora of messages personally or on our InsideAMind socials about breathwork itself and where they can find him. Where can people, because you've got your own business as well through breathwork. Tell the people who might be listening to this a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I work with one-to-one clients over a period of 8 weeks to kind of, it's a transformational type of course where you can be coming at it. When I say transformational, you can be going through any transformation in whatever part of life it can be. Maybe it's a athlete transition. Maybe it's you found a lack of purpose in a high end job, or maybe you're just looking for change and you want something a bit more from life. But also, maybe your health's not optimal. Maybe you're finding yourself a bit lost. So this is where I help through the different techniques, tools that I've been through, and through my own experience of life. I just give people a bit of a way to dial back in, whether I'm using breath work, whether it's a functional breath work or transformational, whether it's, coaching, because that's also a part of the work that I do. But I'm also will be doing a couple more online breathwork sessions. I'll be doing one a month that'll be free, because obviously now that I've moved to South Africa, I've still got quite a big network that I've built in the UK. So I want to keep tabs with that. So if you just follow me on my socials, it's Real Rhys Thomas. So REAL, Rhys spelled RHYS, and Thomas. And I'm on Instagram, Facebook, or catch me on LinkedIn.
Amazing. I'll make sure to put all the links below so people can go to your website, go to your Instagram, and make sure that's all working. I want to ask you one last question before we go, and it's, what piece of advice would you give to the people listening from the experiences you've gone through to better deal with their mental health, especially going into that Christmas phase when it gets darker earlier and predominantly people's mental health starts to get worse at this time of the year?
There's so much. Just slow down if you can.
Yeah.
Try get in nature as much as possible, even if it's raining. Just really trying to make time for being outside. I would highly recommend downloading an app called Breathing app. It's free. It looks like a little grey moon. It's very basic, but it's a great way for you to start putting some routine into your life. Now, I would do that. I would start with a coherent breath, which is just like depending on your capacity to breathe. At this point in time, how dysfunctional you are, I can guarantee 90+% of people will be dysfunctional breathers, is to use the nose, if possible, all of the time, and just breathe in for like a coherent breath of 4, 4, 5, 5, or 6, 6. So 5-second inhale, 5-second exhale. And there's a little app. It's super basic. Just do 5-10 minutes morning and evening, just before you get going, upon rising, before sleep. And that alone is going to make an impact. If you can add a meditation, start to journal, catch a gratitude list, it takes very little impact, but to make huge change. But it's the small things, incremental steps done daily with discipline, because motivation and it's just not, it's got a shelf life. It's not going to fucking work. So you need consistency and you need discipline. And if you can have a reason to do that, so give yourself a purpose, a goal, something that's going to do for 21 days, just give yourself a goal and then work towards it. Journal every day, gratitude list, do your down regulation, morning, evening, get in nature and speak. And if you can't speak, move, embody some movement, go for a run, go to do yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, maybe go for painting, do some pottery lessons. There's a whole bunch of shit we can do that gets us out of here and gets us back in the body.
Amazing.
So if we can do that, and all of us are limited, right? Like I can't go for a run, swim, jog, ride a bike. That's okay. So I shake. I do a little bit of like very low key yoga. I meditate. I do breath work because that's what I can do. So it's not like bumming yourself out. Well, I can't do that. I can't do this. I can't do. Okay. Well, what can you do? And if you can only do 2 minutes, start with 2 minutes. And then the next week go to 3. And the week after go to 4. You know, don't beat yourself up for not being able to do something, but don't give yourself unrealistic targets and goals, because that's just going to make you feel like shit.
Completely agree.
Well said.
Amazing.